The air inside the Manhattan criminal court felt like a heavy blanket suffocating Ellen Raines' soul. At 68, she should have been doting on grandkids or ladling her famous chicken soup at her tiny neighborhood diner. Instead, she sat in the defendant's chair. The hands once steady enough to scoop boiling broth now trembled on the cool wood before her. Every breath felt lined with glass. The room buzzed with whispers like hungry bees. The late afternoon New York heat pressed through the window seams. Everyone was sweating. Everyone except the judge perched high above, his face as hard as the gavel he gripped. "The jury has reached a verdict," the clerk announced. Time halted for Miss Ellie. A stab of pain gripped her chest, a familiar ache that had lived with her through 25 years behind bars. But this one was different. This was the ache of an ending, the ache of hope dying. She glanced at the prosecutor, a sharp-faced man with a little smirk. Through the trial, he had painted her as a monster, a greedy old woman who could kill for money, a heartless hag, a gifted liar. Behind her, among the spectators, she heard Aunt Laura, her old neighbor, stifling a cry. Aunt Laura, one of the few who still believed in her. A flickering candle in a storm of lies. She could never do that. Not Ellie. The older woman whispered, just loud enough for Miss Ellie to hear. But who would believe an elderly woman from the projects over a respected assistant district attorney? Who would believe a woman once imprisoned for arson? The past was a chain clamped around Miss Ellie's ankles, dragging her toward the darkest pit. In the matter of the murder of Mr. Anthony Dion, the judge began, his voice rolling to every corner of the room. The court finds the defendant, Ellen Raines. Miss Ellie shut her eyes. For a breath, she was no longer in court. She was back in her little soup diner, hearing the laughter of 3 boys shoveling spoonfuls of rice and soup into their mouths. Liam, with bravery burning in his eyes. Marcus, whose smile always held gentleness. And Daniel, the quiet youngest, who watched everything like a small, steady star. Where were they now? Were they safe? Were they happy? Guilty. The single word struck like lightning to her chest. The walls of the courtroom lurched inward. Whispers became shouts. She shivered despite the heat. And therefore, the judge droned on. Each word a hammer pounding her identity into splinters. Sentences the defendant Ellen Raines to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Bam! The gavel cracked like a gunshot that ended everything. Life without parole. She would die in a cold cell. She would never again watch the sun rise beyond iron bars. Never again smell garlic and onion hitting hot oil for breakfast. Never again cradle the memory of her sons in the place where they had once been whole, a family. "Your Honor, this is a travesty of justice," shouted her public defender, a young attorney with a giant heart and too little power, but his voice was swallowed by the din. As 2 deputies approached with handcuffs, Miss Ellie looked at the sea of strangers judging her with eyes full of scorn. Was this truly the end? A life devoted to caring for others, finished like this. A story of sacrifice sealed shut by a lie. Then, as a deputy reached for her arm, a voice boomed from the back of the courtroom, deep, unshakable, commanding. "Stop!" Heads whipped around. The noise evaporated into a ringing silence. Through the big rear doors, 3 men strode in, their footsteps on the marble floor like war drums. The air changed. The heavy despair crackled into electricity. Wonder, hope, danger. The man in the lead was tall, wearing an ash-gray suit cut to his frame as if poured there. His hair was neat, his eyes sharp as an eagle's. Every move carried weight and certainty. On his right walked a man streaked with silver at the temples, kind eyes hinting at quiet intelligence. He wore a clean white doctor's coat beneath his blazer and carried a black portfolio. On his left, the youngest said nothing. His bearing alone radiated authority. His black suit and slim laptop bag suggested gear more expensive than the judge's annual salary. Who were they? Politicians? Lawyers? Angels? Or demons? from a world far from the poverty and injustice that had swallowed Miss Ellie. The prosecutor bristled. "Your Honor, sentencing is concluded. Whoever these gentlemen are, they have no standing here." The three stopped mid-aisle. The leader looked not at the judge, but straight at Miss Ellie. For a heartbeat, his flinty gaze softened, revealing a hurt and longing only a mother would recognize. "You're wrong, counselor," he said calmly, goose flesh rising on every arm. "We do have standing." He turned to the judge. "We're her sons." A collective gasp rippled through the gallery. Aunt Laura clapped a hand over her mouth. Even the judge sagged forward, baffled. Miss Ellie felt as though 1,000 needles pricked her heart. Those eyes, that stubborn jaw that set hard when they stood for something. "Liam," she whispered, the name leaving her lips like a prayer carried on a breeze. The man's immaculate confidence faltered for half a second. A small, familiar smile flickered. "Hi, Mom. I'm sorry," the judge stammered. "Did you just address the defendant as your mother?" "In every way that matters, Your Honor," said the man with silvered hair as he stepped forward and set his portfolio on the counsel table. "I'm Dr. Marcus Rains, trauma surgeon at Mount Sinai Hospital." He gestured to the youngest. "This is my brother, Daniel Rains, CEO of Innovate Solutions, a cybersecurity firm. And the man in front of you," he looked to the eldest, "is attorney Liam Rains, partner at Rains and Atkinson Associates. A doctor, a CEO, a lawyer." Miss Ellie's hand flew to her mouth. Her boys, their skinny little bodies that had once fought over the last dinner roll in her tiny kitchen, now stood before her as accomplished men. And beneath the sharp suits and strong frames, she could still see the 3 children she had once taken in. The prosecutor scoffed. "Your Honor, this is absurd. The verdict is entered." She was framed. Liam cut in, his voice slicing the air like a blade. He opened his attaché case. Inside, Miss Ellie glimpsed a worn, fading photo, her beaming with 3 little boys in front of her diner. "And we have proof. Not just proof, evidence," Marcus added, his calm voice carrying enough weight to settle the room. "Evidence that not only proves our mother's innocence, but reveals the real criminal behind this." Daniel raised his laptop, opening it, and that evidence, blue light spilled out like a shard of hope but in a dark court, shows that the person who committed the crime is sitting in this room right now. Silence hit like a thunderclap. Eyes darted, searching, suspecting. The prosecutor stiffened, color draining from his face. The judge looked from the brothers to Miss Ellie, who wept, not from pain, but from a miracle she had never dared expect. Her stars, her 3 promises. After 25 years, they had come back to keep a vow. "We request an immediate stay of sentence," Liam declared, his lawyer's voice steady as granite. "We ask for the chance to present new evidence the system hid from us. Evidence that will not only free our mother, but expose a conspiracy far deeper than anyone in this room imagines." Liam looked from the prosecutor to the judge, and then finally to Miss Ellie. "Give us 5 minutes, Your Honor," he said, the smile on his lips now set with iron. 5 minutes to prove that the woman who saved our lives 25 years ago is being destroyed by the very system she taught us to believe in. This fight isn't over. In fact, it's just beginning. 25 years earlier, rain hammered the corrugated roofs of the South Bronx like 1,000 tiny bullets. Wind howled down the alleys, rattling light poles and threatening to peel the fragile world apart. Inside Miss Ellie's soup diner, a jaundiced bulb trembled, animating the shadows that clung to the cramped room. Ellen Rains, 43, sat alone on a wooden bench. Before her sat a bowl of chicken soup, going cold. A year had passed since her husband Bert died. Silence had become her daily companion. The diner that once rang with laughter was now a shrine to absence. She stared at his faded photo on the wall, his smile still whispering love. Miss Ellie sighed. Life, she thought, was like the soup she made, sometimes warm and comforting, sometimes cooled to tastelessness. Through thunder's growl, A sound sliced the night. Knock, knock, knock. Soft at first, then urgent. Then again, faster. Desperate. Miss Ellie frowned. Who would be out in weather like this? The streets were flooded, the night dangerous. The neighborhood's first rule echoed in her mind. Don't get involved. Then came a small sob, a child's voice. Please help. Fear melted into instinct. Miss Ellie rose and moved toward the patched metal door. Peering through the peephole, she froze. 3 boys stood outside, soaked to the bone, shivering from cold and terror. The eldest might have been 11, tall for his age, eyes hiding fear behind a brave stare. A thin cut leaked along his cheek. He held the hands of the other 2 as if his grip alone could protect them from the world. The middle child, perhaps 9, had a gentle face but eyes too deep for his years, eyes that had already seen sorrow. The youngest, 7 at most, buried his face into his brother's soaked shirt, refusing to face the storm. Against every warning in her head, Miss Ellie opened the door. "Oh my God," she gasped, seeing their drenched clothes, pale faces, and trembling lips. The boys flinched, recoiling as though braced for rejection. "What happened to you?" she asked softly. The eldest swallowed. "Sorry to bother you, ma'am. We saw your light. We just need somewhere dry for a little while." "Come in," Miss Ellie said without hesitation. "Before you get sick." They hesitated but crossed the threshold. Wet footprints trailed across the concrete floor. Like stray animals, they moved cautiously, unsure how to exist in a place that didn't hurt. Miss Ellie fetched 3 clean towels from a cupboard and handed them over. The youngest closed his eyes when the towel touched his head, stunned by tenderness that didn't burn. "Sit," she said, pointing to a bench. "I'll heat up the soup." The bowl that had symbolized her loneliness now found a new purpose. As the pot simmered, the boys huddled together like chicks beneath invisible wings. "Where are your parents?" she asked. The boys exchanged glances. The eldest spoke first. "They're gone." "In heaven," added the middle one softly. Grief stabbed through her chest. "Who do you live with now?" The eldest hesitated, the cut on his cheek tightening. "With our legal guardian, Uncle Richard." Bitterness clung to the name. "Why did you run?" The youngest whimpered and pressed his face against his brother's arm. The middle boy stared into his soup like he could find answers there. "We can't go back," the eldest said at last, his voice quiet, final, and far too old for his age. Miss Ellie asked no more. She could see it in their eyes, the kind of fear no child could explain. She watched them eat, slow at first, then faster, warmth painting color back into their cheeks. She refilled the eldest's bowl 3 times. When they finished, she smiled. "What are your names, boys?" "I'm Liam," said the eldest. "Marcus," murmured the middle one. He pointed to the sleepy little brother leaning against him. "And that's Daniel." Liam, Marcus, and Daniel. Miss Ellie repeated softly, the names sounding like music. "I'm Miss Ellie." "Thank you, Miss Ellie," Liam said. "We'll be out of your way as soon as the rain stops." "Promise." Miss Ellie glanced at the window. The downpour had turned into a flood. "Send you back out to what?" she asked. She studied the 3 lost stars adrift in a black sky. No family, no direction, no certainty. A decision settled in her heart. "You're not going anywhere tonight," she said firmly. "My husband's room is empty and clean. You can sleep there." Liam looked up, startled. We couldn't. That's too much." "What's too much?" Miss Ellie interrupted gently. "Letting you freeze in the streets." She led them into the small room behind the diner. 1 bed, a dresser, a window draped with faded floral curtains, simple but dry and safe. She tucked Daniel into bed first. He fell asleep instantly. Then she handed 2 mats to Liam and Marcus for the floor. Before turning out the light, Marcus whispered, "Why are you helping us?" Miss Ellie smiled, a soft curve of understanding. "Because sometimes lost stars just need a place to rest, so they can shine again." She left them and returned to the diner. Her soup was cold now, but for the first time in a year, she didn't feel the cold of loneliness. In the little room, the brothers crawled into the bed together, preferring each other's warmth to the mats. Beneath the booming storm, they found shelter at last. They didn't know it yet, but that night was not an ending. It was a beginning. 3 weeks later, the diner breathed again. Mornings began with the smell of hot soup and eggs. Nights ended with laughter and whispered dreams. Miss Ellie seemed years younger. The sorrow in her eyes was gone, replaced by a light long missing. While she cooked, she hummed old tunes off-key, but full of joy. The boys had become her sun, moon, and stars, and they changed, too. Liam, the eldest, became her right hand, hauling water jugs, fixing shelves, and guarding his brothers with unshakable devotion. Marcus, the quiet one, tended plants outside the diner and greeted customers with a smile that soothed tired souls. And Daniel, the youngest, spent his afternoons sketching on old receipts. A little house, 3 boys, and 1 mother, all wearing wide, honest smiles. For the first time in years, life tasted warm again. One bright Saturday morning, the diner hummed. Regulars crowded the counter, construction workers, cab drivers, neighbors grabbing breakfast. "Can I get another plate of pork and beans?" a customer called. "1 minute, kid," Miss Ellie answered, cheerful. Liam topped off vinegar bottles. Marcus passed out water glasses. Daniel sat under a table, happily playing with a stray kitten that had wandered in. A perfect morning, too perfect to last. A black luxury sedan slid to the curb, an alien presence on their muddy street. A man stepped out in a tailored designer suit, shoes gleaming like mirrors. 2 big men in crisp white shirts followed, arms like tree trunks. Laughter died. All eyes swung to the newcomer, Richard Vargas. The smile on his lips never reached his eyes. His gaze was cold, snake-like, measuring prey. "Good morning, Ellen," he said, using her first name as an insult, a declaration that he owed her no respect. Miss Ellie dropped the ladle. It clanged on concrete, ringing in the silence. Behind her, the boys drew close. Liam slid in front, small fists clenched. "What do you want, Richard?" Miss Ellie asked, voice tight with held anger. Vargas sauntered in. His goons followed. He looked around with visible disgust. "A soup diner. So this is your new family. How quaint." "Get out," Miss Ellie said, voice quaking with controlled fury. "Not without what's mine." His cold gaze settled on the boys behind her. "Come on, kids. We're going home." "They're not things you own," Miss Ellie said, planting herself between him and the children. "They're children, and this is their home." Vargas laughed without joy. "The law decides their home, Ellen, and the law says I'm their legal guardian." He flicked his fingers. One goon produced a folder. "Want me to read the paperwork to you?" "They're not going with you," she said, each word a steel bar. His calm cracked into rage. With a sweep of his arm, he smashed the nearest table. Bowls, plates, glasses exploded across the floor. Customers scattered. "You don't get to refuse me," he roared, face twisting into something monstrous. He turned on Miss Ellie, eyes blazing. "Who do you think you are? A nobody hiding behind her pots." His hand flashed. The slap snapped against her cheek like a shot. Pain spread across her face, but the deeper wound was in her heart. In front of her boys, in front of everyone. "Don't touch my mother," Liam screamed. He charged like a small bull, punching and kicking with everything he had. "You're an animal. A monster." Vargas flinched at the blitz, but his goons moved faster. They hoisted Liam by the arms, lifting him off the floor. "Let me go! Let me go!" Liam cried, legs kicking air. "Liam's son." Miss Ellie lunged, but another goon blocked her. Vargas dusted his suit with theatrical calm, then studied Liam with a mix of admiration and contempt. Brave, just like his parents. But bravery without power is stupidity. He turned back to Miss Ellie, voice dropping to something colder, more dangerous. "Listen carefully, Ellen. Those boys have an inheritance, a lot of money, and I control it. Keep them here. and I'll make sure you're charged with kidnapping and child abuse." The threat was clear. This wasn't only about the children. It was about money. "I'll give you tonight to think," Vargas said. "Tomorrow I'll be back. If you don't hand them over nicely, I won't just shut down this little diner. I'll ruin your entire life." His men dropped Liam. The boy sprinted to Miss Ellie and clung to her, shaking with rage. Marcus and Daniel cried in a corner. Vargas reached the door, paused, and delivered a final curse of a look. "They're mine, Ellen, and I take what's mine." The sedan roared away, leaving dust and smashed peace. Miss Ellie and the boys stood amid broken glass, spilled soup, and scattered dreams. She pulled them all into her arms, swallowing her own tears. She had to be strong for them. Liam wiped his eyes, lifting his chin. "We'll fight, Mom. We won't let him win." Miss Ellie cupped his cheek. "Yes, son. We'll fight." She swept the shards into a bin. The sun still blazed outside, but a dark shadow had fallen across Miss Ellie's diner. The monster had shown himself, and she knew he would be back, not just to frighten, but to destroy. That night, the sky was starless, a black blanket draped over the city. The air was heavy and humid, carrying the stink of stagnant alley water and fear. After Vargas' rampage, Miss Ellie closed early. The closed sign was a barrier not just to customers, but to the world. Inside, the silence was deafening. She tried to make things normal. Fried chicken adobo became roast chicken, the boys' favorite, but no one was hungry. Plates sat untouched, testimony to the terror lodged in their chests. "What are we going to do?" Marcus's voice broke the quiet, raw and hoarse. Miss Ellie sat beside them, taking Marcus's hand in one palm and Daniel's in the other. Liam stood at the window like a soldier on watch. "Don't be afraid," she said, forcing cheer into her tone. "God will not abandon us. He won't hand us to that monster." But deep inside, she knew prayer alone wouldn't stop a man who could buy law and justice. Richard Vargas wasn't merely a man. He was a system, a rotten one that always sided with the rich and powerful. "I'm not going with him," Liam said, firm, eyes fixed on the dark. "No matter what." "No one is leaving," Miss Ellie said. "We stay together. We're family." She put the boys to bed in her own room that night, not on the floor, but on her mattress. She sang them an old lullaby, the one she had once sung to her lost child. As she sang, she stroked their hair, memorizing every strand, every curve of their faces. When their breathing deepened, she rose and slipped back to the diner, sitting in the dark, staring at her hands, calloused by work, hands that had cradled the boys she had chosen as her own. What could these hands do against Richard Vargas' power? A plan formed, desperate, painful. A sacrifice. 2 a.m. Most of the block slept when the first scream split the night. Fire. Fire. Smoke rolled thick and black. Heat spread fast. When Miss Ellie opened her bedroom door, she met a choking wall of smoke. Her diner, her home, her life, was a red moor of flame. "Boys, wake up," she shouted, terror braided into her voice. The boys jolted awake, eyes wide with panic. "Mom, the fire is crying," Daniel sobbed. "No time to think." Miss Ellie yanked the blanket off the bed and soaked it in the ever-filled water drum. "Cover your noses. Stay with me." She gripped Marcus's and Daniel's hands. "Liam, grab my shirt and don't let go." They crawled through the smoke. Fire licked the walls. Photos blistered and curled to ash. Bert's smile burned away. Outside, neighbors shouted and ran with buckets. But it was too late. The blaze was too big, too hungry. Once they reached safety, Miss Ellie hugged the boys tight as they coughed. Alive, thank God. Alive. But safety was temporary. Sirens wailed, 2 patrol cars screaming in, lights strobing like a death knell. Officers spilled out, and with them, Richard Vargas. He stood at a distance, face arranged in counterfeit concern, eyes glittering with triumph. His plan. "Ellen Raines?" an officer asked, stepping toward her. You're under arrest. What? Miss Ellie choked. Why? Arson, the officer said, reaching for the cuffs. We have reason to believe you torched your own property for the insurance payout. No, Miss Ellie cried. That's a lie. I don't even have insurance. He did this. She pointed at Vargas. He only smiled. Poor Ellen. Tragedies made you delirious. And then she understood. The fire, the accusations, every piece tailored to a perfect trap. No, no, Liam cried, clinging to her leg. Don't take her. Miss Ellie knelt and framed their faces with her hands, her heart splitting into 1,000 shards. Listen to me, she said, locking eyes with each boy. You have to run now. Don't look back. Find Father Joseph at St. Mark's Church. Tell him I sent you. He'll help. But, Mom, how? Marcus sobbed. I'll come back for you. Miss Ellie lied because she had to. I promise. But right now, you must save yourselves. Don't let Richard catch you. Be strong. Be brave. Take care of each other. She kissed each forehead, a farewell blessing. I love you more than anything. You're my stars. Now run. Liam looked one last time at his mother, wrists pulled behind her. The image seared into him like a brand. He grabbed his brother's hands. Go. They ran, away from the fire, away from the cops, away from their mother, toward a future without guarantees, carrying the pain of a broken promise. Miss Ellie watched them vanish into the dark. A part of her soul ran with them. A cop shoved her into the back of a squad car. Through the closing door, she saw her diner in flames, her past turning to ash, and a devil smiling from the shadows. In the police car, to the wail of sirens and the smothering dark, Miss Ellie closed her eyes. She thought only of the boys' safety. For them, she would accept anything: punishment, prison, a lifetime of suffering. The sacrifice of a mother. The beginning of a promise that would take 25 years to keep. Time inside prison kept its own ruthless beat, slow, merciless. Each day a carbon copy of the last. Each night a reminder of everything lost. For Ellen Raines, the first 5 years were hell on earth. The four corners of her cell witnessed soundless tears and unanswered prayers. Convicted of arson and insurance fraud, she received 10 years for a crime she hadn't committed. Each sliver of sunlight that crawled across the bars posed the same question: where are my stars? Are they safe? Amid the violence and despair of a New York State women's prison, Miss Ellie found a new purpose. Leaning on her instinct to mother, she became mom to other inmates. She split her tiny rations with those who had less. She kept her ears open for stories of regret and grief. With old thread pulled from rags, she taught women to embroider gray handkerchiefs with bright flowers, small bursts of color in a colorless world. She learned she wasn't alone in being crushed by injustice. Many were poor women with no defense against a system designed to break them. Helping them became her strength, the way she kept her own hope alive. 10 years in, a new inmate arrived, a young mother arrested for stealing milk for her baby. From her, Miss Ellie heard the name Richard Vargas again for the first time in years. The girl had worked as domestic help in his mansion. She told of 3 orphan boys who vanished after a neighborhood diner burned. Rumors said the boys had run away after discovering the woman who sheltered them was a thief and a liar. Another Vargas manufactured tale to whitewash his name and bury Miss Ellie for good. But in that lie was one truth that lit her like a struck match. The boys had escaped. Vargas hadn't gotten them. Her sacrifice wasn't wasted. Her perspective shifted. Each day in prison was no longer just punishment. It was waiting for the night when her 3 stars would shine bright enough to find her again. Across the country, 3 lives were being forged by promise and vengeance. Liam, carrying anger and resolve, found shelter with Father Joseph. The church became his haven, but the fire in his chest never went out. With the priest's help, he studied, student by day, devouring law books by night in the rectory's small library. He learned young that the only way to fight a system was to master it from within. He took their mother's surname, Rains, as a constant reminder of his mission. A scholarship carried him to Columbia University, where he became known as a fearless debater and loud defender of the voiceless. Every case he won for the oppressed landed like a punch against the ghost of Richard Vargas. He became a lawyer not to get rich, but to be a weapon for those without a voice. Marcus, more tender-hearted, carried the heaviest shadows. Visions of the burning diner and his mother being dragged away haunted him. He was placed with distant relatives and tried to begin again. The hurt led him to a decision. He would become a healer, not only of bodies but of souls. He poured himself into study. A hard-won scholarship opened the doors to a prestigious medical school. He used their mother's other family name for a time, Marcus Sandino, building a new identity as he built a life. In every life he saved in the operating room, he felt he was paying forward what had been given to him, hoping one day his hands would mend his family's deepest wound. Daniel, the quiet youngest, walked the most solitary path. He landed in an orphanage run by sisters. Trauma left him skittish of trust, so his world shifted to numbers and code. The orphanage computer lab became his playground. There he discovered a universe where logic and truth ruled, a place far from human lies. By 11, he was a programming prodigy. He took a name from a patron saint of learning, Daniel Isidore, and built a new persona online. By day, he was a freelance cybersecurity expert protecting company secrets. By night, he traced every digital breadcrumb of Richard Vargas, bank accounts, emails, suspicious transfers, collecting them like puzzle pieces, waiting for the right time to assemble the picture of a monster. For 25 years, they did not meet. Their contact was limited to encrypted messages relayed by Daniel. Brief updates. I'm alive. Almost there. They stayed apart, not from forgetfulness, but necessity. Vargas watched. Solitude was their best shield. Each of them succeeded. A respected attorney, a celebrated surgeon, a shadowy tech magnate. Yet success was hollow. Their mansions were cold. Their lives incomplete. Because home wasn't a place, it was a person. And that person had waited in silence for 25 years. The silence was ending. Stars, however far apart, are destined to align. Their joined light can burn through even the deepest dark. The news hit like a thief in the night, sudden, unexpected, destructive. In his high-tech office at Hudson Yards, Manhattan, Daniel Isidore, once Daniel Rains, was dismantling a sophisticated foreign cyber attack. Lines of code flowed across multiple monitors like green rain. To him, it was a game, a dance of logic and strategy. Then an alert flashed across his screen, a red flag from the hundreds of tripwires he'd scattered over 2 decades. Richard Vargas, media monitoring, priority level 1. Daniel clicked. An article from a major outlet opened. The headline punched him in the gut. Prominent businessman Anthony DeLeon found dead in his Midtown office. Long incarcerated woman is prime suspect. He read with a familiar ache. DeLeon, controversial, rumored to be linked to smuggling, was found stabbed in his office. The heaviest evidence, fingerprints on the murder weapon, matched an inmate, Ellen Rains. She was nearing release after 25 years for arson, the article said, and supposedly held a grudge against DeLeon, who had testified against her back then. The police's suggested motive, revenge. Impossible, Daniel breathed. His fingers flew. He tunneled through public records, police reports, CCTV feeds. Within 10 minutes, a pattern emerged. The evidence was too perfect, testimony too consistent, the story too clean. The hand of a master manipulator, the hand of Richard Vargas. He opened a secure channel, an encrypted citadel only 3 people knew. He typed a single phrase, a childhood code. The stars need to speak now. Across town, in a state-of-the-art operating room at Mount Sinai, Dr. Marcus Sandino, Marcus Rains, was midway through a delicate heart procedure. The room thrummed with tension. Only the heartbeat monitor's rhythm broke the hush. His gloved hands moved with certainty and grace. To him, the human body was a sacred map, and he was the traveler guiding a soul back to life. "Scalpel," he said calmly. A nurse stepped to the observation deck, holding up a tablet. A message flagged code blue. Personal. From the corner of his eye, he saw it. The stars need to speak now. Cold dread slid through him. In 20 years, Daniel had used that code only once, when Vargas nearly traced his location. It meant something that couldn't wait. "Dr. Alcaraz, finish the closure," Marcus said to his assistant surgeon, voice steady despite the storm in his chest. "You can do it." He slipped from the oar, colleagues confused but silent. His voice thundered, each word a bullet of truth. "Sir, would you repeat your claim? You say you saw my client at the scene, despite being blind in one eye and 2200 in the other?" Laughter rippled. Liam smirked. The law was his stage, and he, its sharpest performer. Mid-cross, his phone vibrated in his pocket with a pattern only he knew. He ignored it. It vibrated again and again. The stars need to speak now. Liam's smirk vanished. He straightened. "Your Honor, I request a brief recess. An emergency needs my attention." "Counselor, we're in the middle of trial," the judge objected. "It's a matter of life and death, Your Honor," Liam said, eyes blazing. "My associate can cover." He didn't wait for the gavel. He was already moving. 2 hours later, in a penthouse suite at a midtown hotel, paid for by Daniel through an untraceable account, the reunion happened. No hugs, no small talk, only heavy silence as they studied one another. The skinny, frightened boys had become men, strong, successful, scarred in ways eyes couldn't see. Daniel spoke first. He cast the evidence onto the big screen. The police report, the fabricated statements, the bank records showing large deposits into a dummy account in Ellen's name. A perfect frame-up, he concluded. He did it to make sure she never walks out. Ever. 25 years, and he still won't stop, Liam said, fists clenched so hard his knuckles blanched. Marcus sat, face in his hands. "It's our fault," he murmured. "We should have taken her out of there years ago. We shouldn't have left her alone." "We couldn't," Daniel said, voice flat, bitter-edged. "We were kids, weak. If we'd moved, he'd have destroyed all of us." "We're not kids anymore," Liam snapped, anger erupting like a volcano. "I'm an attorney. You're a surgeon. And you," he jabbed at Daniel. "You could shut down the stock market if you wanted. What are we waiting for? Let's end this." "How?" Daniel asked. "March into his mansion and use force. That's exactly what he wants. Make us criminals to prove to the world he's right about us. So we just sit here while they rot our mother in a cell?" Liam shot back. "No," Marcus said, lifting red-rimmed eyes, new steel in them. "We'll do what we should have done long ago. We fight, but not his way. We fight our mother's way." They looked at him. "What does that mean?" Liam asked. "She taught us the greatest weapon against evil isn't rage or vengeance. It's truth," Marcus said. "And the greatest strength isn't power, it's unity. No more running. No more hiding. No more going it alone." Marcus stood and faced his brothers. "For 25 years, we built walls. Now we tear them down. Liam the warrior, Marcus the healer, Daniel the strategist." For the first time in a very long time, they didn't see strangers bound by tragedy. They saw brothers. "Plan," Liam said, anger cooling into resolve. "Evidence," Daniel answered, opening his laptop. "And hope," Marcus finished. Liam Raines was dismantling a liar on the witness stand. The three stars had reunited. Their mission wasn't only to free their mother, but to reclaim justice long denied. Richard Vargas' game was nearing its end, and the boys he once crushed were ready to collect. The plan began with a name, Isabella Vargas. In Daniel's dossier, compiled over 2 decades, she was Richard's second wife. The first, an heiress, had died in a staircase accident 5 years earlier, which left Richard in control of her entire fortune. Isabella, A former pageant darling 20 years his junior stood beside him like a polished ornament, smiling in photos, silent at parties. "She's the weak link," Daniel said as Isabella's images filled the screen. "Richard is meticulous. He leaves no trail. But people who live in fear always leave a crack. We find the crack. How do we reach her?" Marcus asked. "He watches her like a hawk, eyes and ears in every corner of that mansion." "We don't go to the mansion," Liam said, a lawyer's mind already mapping angles. "We meet her where she's least guarded, where the mask slips." With Daniel's tech, they traced Isabella's routine. Every Wednesday afternoon, Richard granted her 2 hours of freedom, a session at a luxury spa in Midtown. It was the one time his bodyguards didn't hover right at her shoulder, though watchers surely lurked nearby. Their chance. Wednesday, 4 p.m. The spa lobby smelled of lavender and eucalyptus. Soft instrumentals, the hush of trickling water. Faked peace Marcus couldn't feel as he sat on a plush sofa pretending to read a magazine. Moments later, Isabella walked in, more striking in person and more fragile. Her smile didn't touch her eyes. Her hands trembled as she spoke to the receptionist. She wore a simple white dress that couldn't hide how thin she'd grown. A porcelain doll ready to crack. Marcus had already sent an encrypted message to her phone, an invitation to meet in the private garden, with a photo attached, 3 little boys in front of a burning neighborhood diner. Isabella looked down at her screen. Color drained from her face. She glanced around, eyes filling with fear. For an instant, she and Marcus locked eyes. He gave a small nod, rose, and walked to the garden. Minutes dragged. Marcus thought she wouldn't come. Then the door opened. "Who are you?" Isabella asked, voice quaking. "What do you want?" "I'm Marcus," he said gently, "and I need your help to correct a mistake 25 years in the making." He showed her a clearer copy of the photo, the 3 boys and Miss Ellie, all smiling before the storm shattered their lives. "The woman accused of killing Anthony De Leon. She's our mother, and we know your husband is behind it." Isabella shook her head and backed away. "I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know anything. Please go. If he sees you." "He already does." A cool voice cut in. Liam stepped from behind the greenery with Daniel at his side. "We know Richard sent you wired," Liam said, eyes flat. He pointed to a tiny button on her necklace. "A recorder. Standard issue for Vargas pets." Isabella blanched and grabbed the pendant. "Listen carefully," Liam said, tone shifting, cold, dangerous. "You have 2 choices. 1, go back to your master, hand him this recording, and stay in your gilded cage while an innocent woman rots in prison for life. Or 2, he took a step closer, help us. Help us expose the truth. Free our mother. Free yourself." "I can't," Isabella sobbed. "You don't know him. He'll kill me. He'll kill us all." "That's exactly the point," Liam snapped, pain sharpening his words. "We do know him better than you. Do you know what it's like to see your mother slapped across the face? To run through the dark while your home turns to ash? That's Richard Vargas, a monster hiding behind money and power." The words struck like slaps of their own. Isabella's tears slowed. Determination edged into her expression. "I know he's a monster," she whispered. "Then help us," Marcus said, voice soft again. "We can't do this without you. You know his secrets. You see the documents he hides. You hear the calls he makes when he thinks no one's listening." Isabella studied the 3 men. She saw the boys from the photo, children robbed of everything. And for a heartbeat, she saw herself in them. Another victim tired of being prey. "There's a black ledger," she said, barely audible, "hidden behind a painting in his library. It's all in there. Names, dates, payoffs, favors. Every filthy secret. We need it," Daniel said, urgent. "Impossible." She shook her head. "The library is always locked. It has a fingerprint scanner registered only to him." "Nothing's impossible with tech," Daniel said, confident. "Give me 10 seconds with that scanner, and I'll clone his print." "How?" Isabella asked. "He's hosting a massive charity gala next week," Liam said. Everyone who matters will be there. And so will we. He met Isabella's gaze, no longer threatening, now offering alliance. That night, we take back everything he stole. Isabella looked from Liam the warrior to Marcus the healer to Daniel the quiet genius. For the first time in years, something stirred inside her. Hope. "I'll do it," she said. Her voice no longer shook. "For your mother. For me." The days that followed became a race against the clock. The penthouse suite turned into a war room, walls covered with venue blueprints, target photos, and timelines stitched together by Daniel. The air smelled like coffee and tension. The plan had 3 parts, executed simultaneously during the Vargas Foundation Charity Gala. Part 1. Daniel. During the reception line, when Richard shook hands with donors, Daniel would scan his fingerprint using a high-resolution sensor disguised as a suit button. Then, using a portable 3D printer, he'd fabricate a gelatin replica. Fast. Part 2. Marcus and Isabella. Their job was misdirection. Marcus, credible as a renowned surgeon, would take the stage with a short talk about medical missions. While all eyes fixed on him, Isabella would slip into the library, use the fake fingerprint, retrieve the ledger, and scan each page with an app that would beam images straight to Daniel. Part 3. Liam. Once Daniel received the ledger scans, Liam, posted in the event control room with a few techs who were secretly his, would execute the final act, hijack the gala's presentations, and blast the ledger's contents across every screen in front of the guests and media. On paper, the plan gleamed, but they were fighting a devil who'd ruled for decades. Richard struck back. One morning, Mount Sinai's board called Dr. Marcus Sandino. An anonymous tip alleged he'd faked parts of his credentials. His license was suspended pending investigation. Overnight, the celebrated surgeon became a suspect. Daniel woke to frozen bank accounts flagged for suspicious activity, and Innovate Solutions was suddenly drenched in lawsuits from phantom clients. And Liam, walking home from the war room, was cornered in a dark alley by 2 men on motorcycles. "You're too nosy, counselor," one said before slamming a fist into Liam's gut. He collapsed, struggling for air. He tried to fight back, but they were stronger. "Just a warning from Mr. Vargas," the other sneered, driving a boot into his ribs. "Next time, we visit your mommy in prison." The threat slid into Liam's heart like a knife. They left him bleeding and alone, hurting in body, and in the pain of helpless fury. Back at the hotel, Marcus raged. "We have to stop, Liam. We're going to get killed. What if they make good on that threat to Mom?" "That's why we don't stop," Liam shot back as Marcus taped his ribs. "It's proof he's scared. He can feel the ground cracking." "At what cost?" Marcus asked. "Our careers. Our lives. I'll sacrifice everything for her," Liam said, voice rough. Before they could argue more, a knock sounded. Daniel opened the door to find an elderly woman with white hair, a lined face, and eyes that were sharp and familiar. "Aunt Laura," Liam breathed. Their former neighbor, Queen of the Stoop, one of the few who had wept for Miss Ellie in court. "I knew it was you," Aunt Laura said, voice trembling. "I saw you on TV, Liam. Those eyes, I'd know them anywhere." She stepped in, and the penthouse became, for a moment, the tiny diner. Nobody in the neighborhood believed the cops. We all knew Ellie was good, and we all knew Richard Vargas was a devil. "How did you find us?" Daniel asked. Aunt Laura smiled. "Gossip has its own intelligence network, son, better than the FBI." She pulled a yellowing photo album from her tote and opened to a page. "The morning after the fire, before the investigators came, I went through the ashes. I was looking for something, and found it." Affixed to the page was a charred piece of metal, a fancy Zippo lighter engraved with the initials RV. "He dropped it," Aunt Laura said. "I kept it for 25 years, waiting, praying. I knew you'd come back." The brothers traded looks. Her story was more than evidence. It was a sign, proof they weren't alone. "There's something else," Aunt Laura added. "Isabella. You know her?" Marcus asked. How staff talk to market girls, and gossip travels, Aunt Laura said. He hits her often, but she's brave. I heard she's been collecting evidence, waiting for the right moment. As if on cue, the burner phone they'd given Isabella rang. Liam answered. It's Isabella, came a shaking voice. He knows. He knows I've been talking to someone. He locked me away. I think he's going to kill me after the gala. Where are you? Liam asked, keeping his voice calm. I don't know. A warehouse. It's dark, but I heard him talking to his men. He said he has to make sure his surprise for the gala is ready. What surprise? I don't know, but it has to do with your mother. A final solution, he called it. Please, save me, and save her. The line went dead. The board shifted. This wasn't just about exposing Richard anymore. This was a rescue. Their timeline shrank. The danger spiked. We have to change the plan, Daniel said, fingers flying over his keyboard. Find Isabella before the gala. No, Liam said, eyes blazing. We keep the plan. The gala is our trap. When Richard thinks he's already won, when he believes everything's in his hands, that's when we take it all back. He looked at his brothers, then at Aunt Laura, their secret ally. Their tiny army was complete. On gala night, Liam vowed, we won't just save Isabella and our mom. We'll end Richard Vargas' reign for good. The ballroom of the Peninsula, New York, glittered like a jewel box. Massive chandeliers cast golden light over hundreds of guests in their finest tuxedos and gowns. The air was thick with perfume, rich food, and the unmistakable scent of power. This was the Vargas Foundation Charity Gala, the biggest social event of the year, a night when the city's elite gathered to play at being sheep. At the center, like a king in his court, stood Richard Vargas. His custom black tuxedo fit like a second skin. His smile was flawless. His eyes sparkled with triumph. Politicians lined up to shake his hand. CEOs gripped his shoulder. Socialites posed for photos. He was the portrait of philanthropy, a pillar of the community, a perfect lie. Near the grand staircase, attorney Liam Raines stood in a simple, elegant black suit. To the casual eye, he was just another young lawyer hunting connections. But his gaze was sharp, tracking every move, memorizing every face. A barely visible earpiece nestled in his ear. Phase 1 in position, he murmured. A few yards away, Dr. Marcus Sandino chatted with a cluster of physicians. His presence lent respectable shine to the event. Behind the professional smiles, his eyes marked every camera and exit. Phase 2 in position, he whispered into his cufflink. Outside, in a van full of high-tech gear parked in a shadowed corner of the garage, Daniel Isidore and Aunt Laura stared at a wall of monitors. Hidden cameras they'd planted days ago fed multiple angles of the venue. Aunt Laura, wearing a hotel janitor's uniform, served as their eyes and ears on the inside. Phase 3 operational, Daniel said, voice calm. Status report. Target approaching the stage. Libraries on the second floor, West Wing. No guard on the door, but two at the far end of the hall. Aunt Laura crackled from a utility closet, her voice trembling with excitement. This is the beginning of the end. The program began. A famous TV host lauded Richard Vargas' generosity. Glossy videos rolled. Smiling children basking in the foundation's glow. Children who looked healthy on camera, but whose eyes held a fear only the brothers recognized. Ready? Liam asked softly. Target stepping off stage. My button is hot, Daniel replied. The button on Liam's suit was the scanner. He needed only to get close. One handshake, one friendly clap on the shoulder. Marcus, time for your remarks, Liam said. Pull their eyes away. Marcus nodded, took a sip of water, and walked backstage. Moments later, he was introduced as the next speaker. As he moved toward the podium, Liam drifted toward Richard, who was descending the steps. This was their moment. Mr. Vargas, an honor, Liam said, extending a hand, faced the perfect blend of admiration and ambition. Richard's gaze swept him. Attorney Raines. I'm surprised to see you here, he said, amused. I wouldn't miss meeting one of my heroes, Liam replied, smile steady. Richard hesitated a beat, then took the hand. 3 seconds of grip. Enough. Scan complete, Daniel murmured in Liam's ear. Got it. Printing now in the van. A tiny 3D printer hummed to life, building a perfect gelatin copy of Richard's fingerprint. On stage, Marcus began to speak, voice trained to calm frightened families now wrapping around the room. He told stories of remote clinics, of children dying from curable diseases. He meant every word. The audience leaned in. Even the security guards turned their heads. Now, Liam whispered to Aunt Laura. She slipped from the closet and hustled toward the 2 guards at the end of the West Hall. Boys, she cried, voice high and urgent. A pipe burst in the ladies' room, water everywhere. The guards looked at each other. Go, one said, and they jogged off. The hall to the library was clear. In the van, Daniel handed Liam a small gelatin strip. The key. Liam moved quickly up the stairs. He ducked into a shadowed niche as the 2 guards trotted past toward the fake flood. When they were gone, he ran to the library door. The scanner glowed red. He held his breath and pressed the gelatin against it. Beep. Green. The lock clicked. The door opened. The library felt like a sanctuary of sin, dim, scented with old paper and smoke. A massive painting hung on one wall, the stern face of the first wife's father. According to Isabella, the safe lay behind it. Liam eased the painting down to reveal a steel door. He used the clone again. The vault swung open. Inside, resting on velvet, lay a black ledger. His heart slammed. 25 years of rot in one book. He reached for it. Click. A gun cocked behind him. Good evening, counselor, said a voice as cold as an ice bath. I thought you'd be downstairs, trading fake smiles with my guests. Liam turned slowly. Richard Vargas stood in the doorway, gun leveled, a demon's grin on his face. How? Liam asked. Isabella's necklace, Richard said. Not just a recorder. GPS, too. She's been away from me all evening. I knew something was off, so I sent a double to watch your brother's speech while I came up here. Liam was trapped, in a trap within a trap. On stage, Marcus was finishing. The room applauded, but his smile was thin. In the van, Daniel's confusion spiked. Liam, report. Where are you? We're losing the distraction window. Silence. Liam, answer me. The night of truth had turned into a night of danger. Their perfect plan was starting to unravel. Impressed by your ambition, Richard said, edging closer, gun trained on Liam. You and your brothers, an attorney, a surgeon, a computer savant. Who would have guessed the trash Ellie scooped off the street would turn out so useful? I should thank her for raising you for me. We're not yours, Liam said, eyes never leaving the muzzle. No, all this wealth and power could have been yours to inherit, but you chose her. A soup slinger nobody. We chose a mother, Liam said. Richard laughed. Love. Family. Weaknesses. I would have taught you the only lesson that matters. Power is everything. Allow me to give you the final one now. Your mother. Tomorrow morning there will be a random riot at Bedford Hills. An inmate I paid well will put a shiv in her ribs. Looks like prison violence. No trail to me. And you? They'll find your body here. Suicide. Couldn't take learning what a monster your mother really is. While Richard spoke, Liam's gaze flicked, not at him, but to the big mirror on the wall. In its reflection, a narrow panel in the bookshelves eased open. The hidden passage Isabella had mentioned. A shadow slipped out. Marcus, silent as breath. Liam needed a few more seconds. Why? He asked, voice loud to mask the soft footfalls behind Richard. Why this much hate for us, for her? Because she defied you. Richard snarled, face twisting. A gnat daring to face an elephant. She turned down my money. She humiliated me. She showed you there was a path besides mine. There is no path but me. I am the path. Marcus struck, fast for a surgeon. He seized Richard's gun arm and shoved it up. The shot cracked into the ceiling. Shouts erupted in the hallway. They grappled, Richard taller and heavier, but now it was 2 against 1. Liam heaved a shoulder into a bookcase. It toppled, crashing across the doorway to buy seconds. The ledger, Marcus cried. Liam snatched the black book from the vault. Richard lunged, wrenching free and swinging the barrel toward Liam. Mine, he hissed. A small drone zipped through the window in a burst of glass. It shrieked a piercing tone and blasted a searing light. Oh! Richard recoiled, dropping the gun, hands to his eyes. Now! Daniel's voice crackled in Liam's earpiece. Marcus kicked the gun aside. Liam clutched the ledger, and the brothers dove into the passage. They spilled into an old service corridor. Boots thundered nearby. This way. A familiar voice called. Aunt Laura pointed to a service elevator. I'll handle them. Before they could protest, she turned to the rushing guards, clutched her hip, and collapsed. Ow! I slipped my hip. Help! The guards froze, torn between duty and a fallen elderly woman. The 2 seconds hesitation were enough. Liam and Marcus slid into the elevator. The doors hissed shut. In the ballroom, guests buzzed in confusion. A minor technical issue, the MC stammered, trying to soothe. Too late. The detonation had already begun. Every giant screen blinked to black. Then, one by one, images appeared, pages from the black ledger. Names of judges and prosecutors with dollar amounts beside them. Bank wires to politicians. Line items for human trafficking, smuggling, money laundering, and the entry that shattered the room. Dated 25 years earlier, diner fire. Payment to Captain Reed de Leon. Close. Ellen Raines case. A collective gasp rolled across the hall. The names on the screens belonged to people in that very room. Faces drained, glances darted like knives. The final image was a live feed from the library drone. Richard Vargas, suit rumpled, face contorted, bellowing at his guards. Find them. Alive or dead, find them. The king stood naked before his court. The polished mask lay in shards. On stage, Liam took the microphone from the stunned MC. A scrape marked his cheek from the tussle. His face filled every screen. Good evening, he said, voice calm with the weight of 25 years. I'm Liam Raines. The man you see on that balcony is Richard Vargas, the man who killed my parents, who put my mother behind bars, who wrecked our lives. He held up the ledger. And this is his end. Outside, sirens wailed closer. Not Vargas' pet cops, but real officers Daniel had alerted with the data torrent. Richard wasn't finished. He stepped onto the second-floor balcony overlooking the ballroom, one arm locked around a woman, Isabella. Clothes torn, eyes terrified, a blade pressed to her throat. One move and she dies, he shouted. The gala froze. Victory flipped into hostage crisis. Richard, it's over, Liam called, forcing his voice even. Let her go. There's nowhere to run. Not until I watch you all suffer, Richard spat. You, Liam, with your courage. You, Marcus, with your kindness. You stole it all from her. That woman, you should have been mine. We were never yours, Marcus said, steady and gentle. Because she taught us something you'll never understand. And what's that? Richard sneered. Love, Marcus said. Forgiveness. The word shifted the air. In that beat of confusion, a woman's voice flowed through the ballroom sound system. Warm, authoritative, unafraid. Not Liam. Not Marcus. Not Daniel. A woman. The screen switched to a live feed from the van outside the hotel. Miss Ellie sat between Daniel and Aunt Laura. Lines of age and hardship mapped her face, but her eyes shone like stars. Ellie, Richard whispered, ghost-struck. How? Liam echoed under his breath. While you were busy, Daniel said in Liam's ear, the governor issued emergency clemency for Mom based on the preliminary evidence I sent the Attorney General this morning. I picked her up. Miss Ellie looked straight into the camera, as if into Richard's soul. Let Isabella go, Richard, she said softly. I know there's still something good in you. The same goodness I saw when you were a boy, dreaming of helping the poor before money and power swallowed you. Shut up, Richard barked. the knife biting a thin red line along Isabella's neck. "Do you remember your dreams, Richard?" Miss Ellie continued, not accusing, inviting. "It isn't too late to return to yourself. Not for me. Not for them. For you." For a heartbeat, his grip loosened. Confusion flickered. Regret. In that sliver of mercy, Isabella moved. She bit his hand, slammed an elbow into his ribs. The blade fell. A SWAT sniper waited below, but another figure struck first, one of Richard's former bodyguards he'd discarded. From behind, he wrenched Richard's arms up and pinned him. The fight was done. No blood spilled. In the end, what failed Richard Vargas wasn't a bullet, but the weight of all the people he'd hurt, finally brave enough to stand. 6 months later, the corner where Miss Ellie's Bronx Diner once stood had become a new building. Not a cramped eatery, now the 3 Stars Community Center. Hot meals, free legal clinics, free medical checkups for those with the least. On the roof, a small garden thrived. Miss Ellie, free and smiling, watered tomato vines and eggplants. One afternoon, Liam handed her a frosty glass of water. Below, kids shouted and chased a ball. "We've helped so many," Liam said softly, pride in his eyes. "Not we. You," Miss Ellie corrected. Liam shook his head. "No, Mom. You. You taught us that helping others is the real work." Marcus arrived with a plate of snacks. "And you taught us that family doesn't end with blood." Daniel followed, smiling more these days. "And that no matter how dark it gets, there's always light." They sat together on a wooden bench, watching the sun sink over New York. The city's rough edges looked beautiful from here. Isabella joined them, now one of the foundation's directors. Peace had replaced fear in her eyes. With her came Aunt Laura, officially head of community relations, unofficially the neighborhood's most connected source. "Oh, look at this, getting sentimental again," Aunt Laura teased. Laughter bubbled up. The family was complete, built not by blood alone, but by trials, sacrifice, and steadfast love. As twilight deepened, Miss Ellie studied her 3 men, her lawyer, her doctor, her genius. In her heart, they were still the 3 thin boys who had knocked on her door on a rain-lashed night. "I told you I'd come back for you," she whispered to the breeze. Liam smiled. "No, Mom. We came back for you." Miss Ellie gathered them all into her arms. "The truth is," she said, "we all came home together." Above the rooftop, over the noise and clatter of the Bronx, 3 stars burned bright. So bright their light promised that even in the blackest night, hope and love will win. A new beginning.